afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Asian Vision Dialogue. Today, I have a great pleasure to have our guest speaker, Dr. Joseph Mathieu. He's a senior professor at the Beltei International University of Cambodia to join us again in this episode. And for the topic for our discussion today, we will talk about China's 12-point peace plan for the peace in Ukraine. And without further ado, let me welcome Dr. Joseph to our program. Greetings, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for accepting our invitation and joining us again in this important topic. So, with regard to the current China proposal for a peace plan in Ukraine, can you tell us briefly about the peace plan of China and what are the priorities of China for peace in Ukraine?
Okay, I thank you to the AVI and inviting me again. And providing me an opportunity to express my view on this very important topic. Now, before the China issued the 12-point peace plan, there was also the United Nations resolution was passed. And then before that, also in the G20, the Ukraine President Zelensky had presented his 10 points. So this is not the first peace plan. So we have a plan about the United Nations resolution and the 10-point plan of the Ukraine. But when we looking at the China 12-point peace plan, it look more comprehensive. And I would say that the world should give a very serious consideration to the China peace plan because it has all elements. It includes all elements which I personally believe will lead to the ceasefire and eventually a peace in the Ukraine. This is a golden chance that the world has to make this plan as a basis for bringing the peace between Ukraine and Russia. Now, what we're seeking, this 12 points are talking about the sovereignty, respecting the sovereignty, integrity, territorial integrity, everything. But the most important is the point number 4. The point number 4 is talking about resuming a peace talk. Now, this is the core, the spirit and the soul of the whole plan that is talking about starting or resumption of the peace talk. And the peace talk resumption is negotiation and dialogue and face-to-face talk. Now, the basic problem in the Ukraine and Russia war that these two parties had no opportunity to come together and talk physically without intervention, without interruption of the third party. They have not allowed them. So because the one side, European Union and NATO, were backing up the Ukraine, and other side, Russia have to deal with the whole European Union and other. So there was no any opportunity. What this plan is identifying, the opportunity that Ukraine and Russia should come together on the table without third party and negotiate and sort out the political settlement of this conflict. Now, the word, the action speak louder than word. Now we're looking at the China role. If you remember the last week, 2 weeks ago, China have meditated a peace treaty between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, China's role coming up now as a peace broker in the Middle East, mediators in the Middle East. Now, the way they have bring the peace between two Middle Eastern power, Saudi Arabia and Iran, it is absolutely the unprecedented. It is a historical, because actually the people who understand the Islam, people who understand the faith of Islam, they know the importance of this peace treaty. It looks like to the world, this peace treaty is between Saudi Arabia and Iran, but it is not. It is between the two biggest sects in the Islamic world. Iran represents the Shia sect, and Saudi Arabia represents a Sunni sect. These two sects are fighting with each other not only for now, for last 1400 years. The conflict between Shia and Sunni is 1400 years old. Now, and this is the first time in the history there's a third party, they came into it and bring the peace in these two countries. Now, after this peace, all the Arab countries, they support this peace initiative of China, European Union, United Nations, and it was admired and appreciated all over the Islamic world. There are 56 Islamic countries in the world. They all appreciate it. No, so because the impact of this peace treaty will be, you will see in the all Islamic world, because Shia-Sunni problem is not only in the Middle East, but in the all over the Islamic world. You can take the example in the Egypt, in Iraq, in the Yemen, in the Lebanon, in the Syria. These all problems in all the Middle East, the major problem is Shia-Sunni. Bringing two biggest sects together and bringing the peace and harmony, it is a very big achievement. And that bringing the China on the international stage as a main peace broker, main mediator, and the big player in the Middle Eastern geopolitics. So I think that if the Ukraine and the Europe and the Russia would looking at this China has potential. China has the capacity or competency. He can bring the peace in the Ukraine, as he did with the Saudi Arabia and Iran. It was impossible. You know, the many countries, they tried to bring in the peace between the Saudi Arabia because their diplomatic tie was broken 7 years ago. There was no diplomatic relation. There was no any connection between two countries, and they were fighting on geopolitics, history and the religion. So that's why bringing these two powers that show that China has that potential, China has that strategy who can bring the peace. If they can bring the peace in the Middle East, why they cannot bring the peace between the Ukraine and the Russia? Ukraine-Russia is a problem, it's not that complicated. Because actually the Ukraine has been part of the USSR. In only the 1991, Ukraine became an independent state. Before that, it was part of the USSR, of the Union of the Russia. So I think that it is only 32 years when the Ukraine got the independence. So I think if you're looking at it, it is not that complicated, it's not that complex. But the problem is that there are some external forces, European Union and the NATO and the USA, they do not want a peace. They do not want the peace. They want continue. And that Ukraine is becoming a black hole where this Ukraine is sucking in the European economy. There is a big problem in the European economy. Most of the countries are facing a recession. The food prices are going high. The gas prices are going high. Now the government of the NATO government or the European government who are supporting the Ukraine, but who is suffering? The taxpayer, the ordinary people in the Europe and America, they are suffering from it because the Ukraine war, Ukraine is becoming a black hole which is sucking up all the, the European economic gains, economic advantage, And all the prosperity of the European, they're sucking into the European, because they are billions of dollars they are spending on the Ukraine to continue that war. So I believe this is the right time for the world that should take China peace plan very seriously, and they try to be. And now the President Xi Jinping, today he's in the Moscow, and if you see, and then Japanese Prime Minister, he's in the Ukraine. So you see the parallel summit is going on in the day. So there are need now that they should come up some idea, something, and they should give the very serious consideration to the Chinese peace plan. And I think if they will allow China to work with the both party freely, I think that China has the capacity, China has the ability to bring the peace in the region.
Thank you, Dr. Joe.
Yes,
That's very insightful.
Okay.
So, concerning your point of view on China's role as a main mediator, and I would be curious about the reaction from Russia and Ukraine. Whether are there any responses or the support from Russia and Ukraine on China proposal? Yes.
Yeah, it's a very good question actually. So far, the Russia have supported. And today in the meeting with President Xi, in his press conference, he said that the China peace plan can become a basis or foundation of making a peace. So China have actually consent agreement from Russia, but then again, President Xi is planning to calling to the President Zelensky to discuss about this peace proposal. If the both party would be agree, then probably this process will be rolled out and then will be continued. I think the China has a strategy and capacity and resources that can bring, and influence also, can bring the peace in between the Russian and the Ukraine. It is not so complicated as it was between the Saudi Arabia and Iran. So I think if the both parties agree on some point, then probably the bringing the peace and bringing them both parties on the table to talk with each other. Because actually if you look at the Prime Minister Samdech Hun Sen, he always believed you cannot have a peace with another war. War cannot bring the peace. So the peace you can achieve through dialogue, sitting together without intervention or participation of the third party. Now, in the Ukraine, there are external forces who are influencing and actually interrupting the peace process. If these forces actually be minus or take them out, then if they allow the Ukraine and the Russia sit together, I believe they will sort out the political settlement of their conflict. They can. This is we all political commentators, they believe if the China would given the chance to bring the peace, China can do it, because China have an influence, China have resources, China have a capacity, China have a strategy, because they already done. Because the world have seen how they brought the peace treaty between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Your action speak louder than your words. You don't speak. It's not only we call, Khmer say, the paper tiger. The China peace plan is not only the paper tiger, it is actually a practical document. But actually some of the European countries, they opposing because they do not like a China influence. They don't accept the China leadership in the world. So these are actually the geopolitical problem, but it has nothing to do. But the China is completely sincere and he's committed to bring the peace if the both parties giving the chance to the China. They will. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Joe.
Yes, please.
When we talk about the current situation in Ukraine, so apart from China 12-point peace plan, do you think, how about other international community? Do you think how and when will the Ukraine war can be ended? Yes.
Yeah, it's also that, as earlier I said that there was the 10-point the Ukraine had presented, but in that 10-point they were blaming, accusing Russia, and they want punishment. That the Russia should be prosecuted and Putin should be do this. So these are the if you want to bring the peace, you have to forget about taking a revenge. So peace only brings when you forget and forgive. As I was telling in my first interview, forget and forgive is the only policy strategy that can bring the peace. If you do not forget, if you do not forgive your enemy, you cannot bring the peace. So the Zelensky 10-point, what actually is a good point. I mean, the 12-point have all the ingredient element what the Zelensky was talking about, but the Zelensky was emphasizing to prosecute, to punish the Russia and the Putin for the atrocity and the human rights they violate in the Ukraine. I mean, if you will do this, you will not able to bring the peace. So like Samdech CHHOUN said always, that forget and forgive, that is a base of bringing the peace. If you do not forget or forgive to your enemy, you cannot bring the peace. You see Samdech CHHOUN has how he integrated through the Pol Pot regime, deserter. And the army, they bring it through the peace, what called the win-win policy, win-win strategy they bring. This is what the China is all about. China wants to bring the peace. Peace through the negotiation, peace through the dialogue, not through the blaming and accusing each other. So Russia is angry at the moment. And other, the power like a USA, they have their own political agenda in the Europe. So there are 40 countries in the world who are supporting the war in the Ukraine, 40 countries. And there is not even the one single country who talking about the peace. And this war is dragging up, is entering into the second years. And then, like I said earlier, it is like a black hole. It's sucking into the whole European economy. Now, if you look at the European economy, is facing a problem. There is a recession in the UK. There is a problem in the economic problem in the France, in the Germany. There is a food crisis. There is a food cost, and the living cost is going high in the Europe. Usually, these governments are supporting the Ukraine war, but who paying the price? The common people. Common people on the street, the taxpayers in the Europe and America, they're paying the price because the cost of the living is going very high. The cost of the food and living and the oil, so everything is going very high, and people are paying. So, and it's all connected with the Ukraine war. And then beside that, also the financial institution are affecting. Now about the one last week, one of the biggest bank, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, was bankrupt.
Yes.
Completely collapsed. And this bank collapsed in the 48 hours. And it has a chain effect. It affects also Swiss Credit Bank also. There are two banks. They have completely collapsed. Now, this all link going through the war. To going to the Ukraine is sucking in all the resources, material resources, financial resources, strategic resources of the Europe. Europe are spending billion and billion of dollars to sending the. Now, I was watching this morning the NATO Secretary General, what he's talking about. He's talking about the raise defense budget. He asking the European country and the NATO country to increase the budget of the defense, buy more weapon, supply more weapon to Ukraine. Now, how come this will be end war? Like Putin was saying, the Europeans want to support Ukraine until the last man he die in the Ukraine. So this war should be end because it is burden, and it is burden. It becoming a liability, and it's affecting everything in the world, not only the food chain, the food and the supply chain, and also affecting the economic and the financial institution, everything. So this war should be stopped now, and I want that they should realize this is the right time for them. Let the China work. Let the China work and support let the China work, and the world should support China to work with the Ukraine and with the Russia to bring the peace in the region. And I think that China can do it. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for your kind participation and contribution today. I think our audience have learned a lot from this topic, and I look forward to having you again in our next episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Asian Vision Dialogue has now come to an end. Thank you for watching. See you next time.